Good morning to Ms. Shannon O'Hagan from the University of Missouri, Columbia. Thank you so much for joining us this early in the morning. We truly appreciate your kind time for joining us for the Admissions 101 admission workshop series. So truly appreciate your time, and good evening to all my fellow attendees from India, high school students, 12th grade, parents, and high school counselors. Really appreciate you taking the time on a Friday evening to join us this late. So as you may have seen from our marketing email that went out to you and your schools, today's session topic is going to be bad news, good news, studying medicine, health professions, and STEM. And we have Ms. Shannon O'Hagan from the University of Missouri, Columbia, who would be presenting more information on this topic. I know when the emails had gone out, many of you had written back stating your interest. We had also heard from the counselors stating about the interest on this topic and questions about the University of Missouri, Columbia. So I'm really happy to have Ms. Shannon O'Hagan out here. And Ms. Shannon, I think I'm going to now let you lead the stage, and the floor is yours, the mic is yours. So thank you so much once again, and I wish you the very best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's certainly my pleasure to have this opportunity to connect with all of you today. And I hope this topic will be of interest. My plan for the presentation is to provide you with some general information about the topic overall for US universities, so not necessarily specific to my institution, but then also to incorporate some examples about Mizzou. And then at the end, I will provide some details about kind of our specific application process. So it'll be a combination of general information as well as specific highlights particular to my university. As a brief introduction, my name is Shannon O'Hagan, and I work in the Office of International Admissions at the University of Missouri. I do have my email address here, but I will put this again at the end of the presentation, so you will have another opportunity to see this. And I wanted to just very briefly introduce my institution, just to provide a little bit of context for some of the general content that I will be sharing. So my institution is the University of Missouri. But our nickname is Mizzou. So that's M-I-Z-Z-O-U. That's that word you see across your screen there. And we are located centrally in the US. So I'm joining you from the state of Missouri, which is gold on the map there of the US. And we are located centrally within that state in the city of Columbia. My university has about 30,000 students, including international students from more than 100 countries, and 300 degree programs from bachelor's through PhD. We are a large research university, so research is certainly a big part of what we do. And that's something that will tie into some of the examples that I will be providing specific to this presentation. I wanted to start by talking about studying medicine in the US. And the reason I wanted to start with medicine is because this is a very common question that I receive from students who are interested in medicine or medical related fields. And they're not as familiar with how that works for the US. And this is an area that I happen to have a little bit extra background in. I previously worked as a residency coordinator for a general surgery residency program. And so I understand the higher education, the university side of the process, as well as the residency training aspect. So I wanted to be able to break down this information because it's one that can be a little bit confusing to understand your options for studying medicine in the US. So the question I get very often asked by students is, can I study medicine in undergrad? I want to be a doctor, what are my options? And the answer is complicated. In the US, the medical education system works differently than many other countries around the world. Instead of going into medicine after high school, students must first earn a bachelor's degree and then begin their medical education. So medicine is not actually offered as a bachelor's degree in the US. And so you might be wondering what the path is or how long it takes. And the answer is that it's a pretty long one for US studies. So as mentioned, 4-year bachelor's degree, then 4 years of medical school. And then after medical school is residency, which is an additional 3 to 7 years in your chosen specialty, such as general surgery, family medicine, neurosurgery, plastic surgery, any type of doctor that you can imagine, there's a residency associated with that. And then after residency is fellowship, which is typically optional depending on your subspecialty, and that would be an additional 1 to 3 years of training. So it's a very long path in the US, and it just looks a little bit different than it does in a lot of other countries. And there are different kind of steps in that process as far as how to apply. So each one has kind of their own separate application process and requirements. And this is something that is particularly challenging for international students. And the reason for this is not because of ability, it's because of capacity. So many medical schools in the US, unfortunately, do not admit international students to their programs, particularly state universities such as the University of Missouri. And the reason for that is because being a state university, that means that they receive some of their funding from the state government in which they live, or which they're located. And so as part of that, they have to give first priority to students from that state. And since their medical schools have such limited capacity, oftentimes they do not have the seats available for international students. So more often, if this is something that you are really interested in, becoming a medical doctor, sometimes it's better to look at private universities who may not have these same restrictions. Additionally, beyond the capacity challenge, the other challenge is cost. Medical school in the US tends to be very expensive, and scholarships funding available is quite limited. So it's very common for US students, for example, who are going to medical school to take out large loans that they know they will then pay back once they become a practicing physician. But you kind of have that, unfortunately, those two factors of just limited capacity and high cost with limited funding. So it is a challenging path, and I just like to make students aware of this reality as they are exploring their options. And so, not to be all gloom and doom, there are some options available to students. And so some students will find that it works better for them to attend medical school outside of the US, so perhaps in their own country or in a different country, and then potentially come to the US through either an elective rotation. So this is kind of like a study abroad program in medical school, where you could come and do like a short-term rotation and gain experience within the US medical system. And some students will find that they might complete medical school outside of the US and then decide to come to the US for residency training. The competitiveness of residency programs varies depending on specialty, but the actual path to do this is a little bit easier than it is in some cases for applying to medical school itself. So just to be aware that it is a challenging path, but there are some options for you. And so my big message for this is to research your options, to kind of get an idea as you are in high school even, or exploring different US universities, what options are out there. There's many different articles online you can read as far as understanding the process and how many medical schools do admit international students, and doing that process early so that you know before you begin what types of options that you do have. And if you do ultimately decide that you want to study medicine in the US, you might be wondering what it is you actually will study in your bachelor's degree, since we don't offer medicine as a bachelor's degree. And the answer is that there's really not any singular area of study that students do to go into medical school. Students study a variety of disciplines, and you would work with your academic advisor to decide what is the best one for you. So some of the common ones are in STEM-related fields, but there really are a variety. The big thing is that you're taking coursework to prepare you for medical school requirements. And so no matter what program you choose, you would be considered a pre-medicine student if you're interested in applying to medical school once you're done. So pre-medicine is actually an advising track and not an academic major. So an advising track means that you're working with an advisor to make sure you're taking the coursework and gaining the experiences you need to then apply to medical school once you are in your final year. So that's particular to medical school. And I think something that I always like to highlight here is that's really when it comes to the Doctor of Medicine program. So if you want to become a practicing physician, that is where the limitations lie in terms of the admission process for medical school. If you're interested in other health-related professions, there are not the same limitations. So you do have many opportunities available. So if you're interested in more of the research side, if you're interested in other types of health professions and helping professions, those are not limited. And so you do have a lot of opportunities there. I've listed examples of health professions at my institution to kind of give you an idea of what's available at the bachelor's, master's, and doctoral level. because even with health professions, they tend to be a little bit non-traditional in some senses of how they're structured, because different health professions have their own credentialing, their own accrediting bodies where students have to take, in some cases, a series of exams in order to be a licensed professional in that particular area. And so some areas, such as physical therapy, for example, do require a doctorate level program in order to be a practicing physical therapist. But then some others you can start at the bachelor's program. So you'll find a variety of those. So it just does take a little bit more research on your end to kind of understand that path and to certainly connect and ask questions of the university if you're not sure of what that path looks like for the different health professions that are of interest to you. And I am going to talk about different STEM programs at US universities, because this is another really big topic that I wanted to cover in this presentation. But before I did that, I did want to take a quick pause because I wanted to just see if, as far as questions go, if you have questions related to medicine and health professions, because I know this is one where there does tend to be a lot of confusion, or it's just very different. And so we had one come in. I just wanted to invite you, if you do have questions specific to medicine and health professions, if you want to go ahead and ask those now, and I can address them. And then also, I'll also have time at the end for overall questions. But I did see I have someone ask what majors to select at the bachelor's level to pursue medicine. And so really, it does vary as far as what you select. Some common ones would be, as mentioned, in the STEM field. So if you're interested in, say, biomedical engineering, if you're interested in biology, biology is a pretty popular one. There's one that's kind of specifically on track for students who are interested in medicine. But the good news is that it's not like a one size fits all. Students do have some flexibility there to choose a major that they're most passionate about. And so your academic advisor can help you make that decision. Someone has asked if you need to take math in high school for pursuing pre-med. This will vary from one university to another. It also depends on what area you want to study as a bachelor's degree student. So many universities in the US do look to see that you have at least some math coursework throughout your high school career. The level of that math will vary from one institution to another in terms of what they're looking for. For students who maybe aren't as strong in math and they know that they will have a rigorous math curriculum in their bachelor's program, oftentimes universities do have different levels of coursework, oftentimes a placement test for students when it comes to math to make sure that you are placed in the right math level, and then you can work your way up to improve your math specific to your degree program. So great questions there. But I see I have one more come in, and then I'll transition back into talking about STEM. So then, are all med schools in the US open to international students? Unfortunately, no. Many medical schools in the US are not open to international students. So just to clarify what I had mentioned there, oftentimes it's public universities, state-supported universities, who do not admit international students. And the reason for that being, again, due to capacity issues, where they have to prioritize the admission of students from that state and from the US. So you'll just have to check with the different institutions to see whether or not they do. More often it's something that private universities are more often to admit international students. So that's where you have alternate options if you're unable to do a Doctor of Medicine program. Great questions. I'll now talk about different STEM programs at US research universities, and I'll use examples from my institution to kind of highlight some of the types of experiences you can expect in studying STEM in the US. And then I'll continue on to talk about Mizzou specifically. So for a little bit of context, that might be helpful to explain what really is a research university. And so there are different types of universities in the US. Of course, you might be aware that the US higher education system is incredibly diverse, and there's many different institutional types, sizes, locations within our system. And so sometimes I know that can be a little bit difficult to understand really what type of university you're looking at when you're exploring your options. And so there are different classifications you can look to understand what is the institutional type. But one of the most common ones is the Carnegie classification. And so a research university here is defined by the research that happens at that institution, as well as whether or not they issue doctoral degrees. And so even within that, there's R1, which is the highest level of research activity, and R2, which is still significant research activity. At Mizzou, for example, we are a R1 doctoral granting research university. And as you see there, we have about $205 million each year in research expenditures. So that's how research universities are defined. And there are many different benefits of attending US research universities for students. Often research universities attract really great faculty members who are participating in research in their respective fields. And that's great for students because you're being taught by people who are truly leaders and innovators in their respective fields, and they're often incorporating that research into the classroom instruction. And then there's often opportunities for students to engage in research even at the undergraduate level. So you don't have to wait to be a doctoral student to participate in research. You have really good opportunities there to connect with graduate students, connect with faculty, get involved with those types of projects, and learn through that process. With research being an important part of the experience, there's also really good facilities and resources behind that to support faculty members and students. So to give an example, there's often, like at my university, an undergraduate research office, a graduate research office, as well as research support for, faculty as well. So you have a lot of resources to help you get connected to these opportunities and state-of-the-art facilities to lead to really great work. And for those of you who are thinking about continuing on to, say, a master's or PhD level program, since these universities do offer those programs, it's a good way to at least learn what that looks like and potentially continue on at that same university or even at a different one. Now, related to research universities, there are many different ones in the US, and within the category of research university, there's another category called the Association of American Universities, or AAU. And this is a prestigious group of universities in the US and Canada that are dedicated to research and high academic standards. Mizzou is very proud to be a part of this group for a very long time, and it's something that is an indicator to students of kind of the quality of the instruction as well as the research happening at that institution. So these are just some statistics about AAU universities, but I wanted to highlight it because it can give you an idea of an indicator of quality when you are researching different institutions or type of activity happening at that university. And I think one of the things where this is especially highlighted related to STEM, related to research, related to AAU, is with the current challenging global pandemic that we're all facing, because this has been a time where AAU universities and research universities in general have really demonstrated one of their great abilities, and that is an innovation. And so they've really been contributing to addressing the many different challenges of the pandemic and have been leaders in that capacity. And so I've highlighted just a few different examples here of some of the outcomes from AAU institutions in particular that are related to STEM as well as to different aspects of addressing the challenges we face. And that's certainly something that is happening at my institution as well. What's great about it is that you see it very much interdisciplinary in addressing the different challenges and concerns. And so it's great to be a part of an institution that is helping the bigger picture. So the research that happens at AAU institutions, at research universities, it's not that that research just happens on campus. It impacts broader society and even the world. And so that's something that is an important element of a research university and also STEM fields. So studying STEM, in case, I guess I haven't really defined it yet, but STEM of course stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And there are some characteristics of studying STEM that might be helpful to know as you're considering your different options there. So it is often interdisciplinary and hands-on or applied learning when it comes to the actual types of coursework you'll be taking and the method of instruction. And there are many reasons to consider STEM fields. Certainly it's one where with that interdisciplinary nature, it's one that's often called upon to address some of the challenges that we all face. So I used COVID as an example of that, but truly it's any aspect of society that oftentimes STEM fields are looking to address of challenges of now and into the future. And also it's something where there is a positive outlook in terms of job growth and income. So that might be something that's worth considering as well. And I do think it's important to, to think about long-term as you are exploring your different options available. So this is a chart I like to show because this is a chart of our recent graduates at Mizzou, and their academic program is listed on the left, and then the industry that they end up working on is on the right. And so this is, I like to use this to illustrate how what you study can prepare you to work in any number of industries. So things in, for example, STEM falling kind of under the arts and science, there's so many different industries that students can go into. And so it's really important that you are prepared to work in any number of fields because there are so many opportunities out there, particularly with changing needs in a global society. And that's something that I think is highlighted through this example here. This is through the World Economic Forum, and it kind of shows you the evolving skills that are most sought after from the workforce. And so it's something that it is evolving, it is changing. And this is something that I think STEM fields can be particularly helpful to preparing you to not just learn the content of the topic, but also to understand how to apply concepts to many different situations. So now I'll talk about some, different types of STEM fields, different STEM programs. And I just included this list just to highlight how diverse and how many different options there really are. So of course, there's no way I would be able to talk about all the different STEM programs in the US or even at my institution, but I just wanted to show you that there are many options available. There's many specializations even within these options. And so we'll start by talking about science. So science certainly itself is kind of a broad category, and there's many different types of sciences and subcategories and specializations. And so you'll have many different opportunities to study science depending on what that interest is to you. Again, I wanted to highlight through Mizzou just some of our different science programs available just to show you the breadth of options available and to show that you can study one overall program, let's say geography, but you could also do a subspecialization if you're interested particularly in this case, physical or environmental geography. So you do have a lot of options available to you when you study science programs, especially at a research university. What's great about science is also that tends to be really strong faculty involved. I know at Mizzou we're very fortunate because we have faculty in our science programs who are truly leaders and experts in their fields. We have 11 total faculty who are members in the National Academy of Sciences, which is one of the highest honors a scientist can receive in the US. And we even have a Nobel Prize winner. And so if this is something that is important to you, if you're interested in the sciences, you want to know that there are faculty who have achieved really great things in their fields, these are some of the things that you can look for when you're exploring different universities. I mentioned previously that research universities tend to have strong facilities. So I thought that would be something that would be worth highlighting for the sciences, because sciences do tend to have a lot of hands-on learning and research opportunities. And so this is another thing to look for as you're exploring institutions. What I wanted to highlight for my university is the University of Missouri Research Reactor. We are very fortunate to have the highest power research reactor on a college campus in the US. And this is great because it supports a lot of interdisciplinary research, both on campus and with industry. It also generates many radiopharmaceuticals that help to really help greater society, really help patients who are undergoing radiation therapy. So that's just one example of the many different facilities that are available. And this is something that you can explore as you're looking at different institutions and what facilities they have to offer. A program I wanted to highlight as kind of emphasizing the sciences and the interdisciplinary nature of them is biochemistry. So biochemistry at Mizzou, for example, as you see here, has more than 30 research groups associated with it. And so when you have kind of a large comprehensive research university, there's more opportunities for this type of interdisciplinary work among faculty members that also is available to students. So it can be a benefit in that way. And so the research that happens is then making use of the interdisciplinary areas of the expertise as well as the facilities that are available. Now we'll talk a bit about technology. So if you're interested in technology, there's many different elements or aspects of technology, and this is another one that can fall into many different categories. At my institution, a lot of our technology programs fall under our College of Engineering but you will find it in different organizational areas depending on the institution. I think an important part of technology is that you would have strong facilities to support that. You want state-of-the-art equipment and facilities as you are learning technology so that you're ready to kind of work in that particular industry. So this is something that is a spotlight for our information technology program. These are all our IT-related labs and classrooms that kind of are showcasing some of the technology that we have available to our students. So these are specific to IT, but at the same time, they're available to many different disciplines. So people in other specialties can also take advantage of these resources. And one of the great things related to technology is certainly the great research that's going on in many different areas. So at Mizzou, we have a great cybersecurity center, for example, where there's a lot of interdisciplinary work happening among our faculty members. As you see here, electrical engineering, computer science, mathematics, business, different professors are involved in the cybersecurity center, and this is something that students can also get involved with in different types of research that's happening. So at my institution, for example, one of the things that I think is kind of cool is that they've developed a new approach to cyber attacks. This is neat because they've incorporated artificial intelligence as well as psychology principles, and it essentially tricks the attacker into thinking their attack is working, and then it sends it into quarantine and does not allow the attack to be carried out. And so this is just one example of the types of research happening at institutions that impact the broader society, and that there are many different types of topics within that our institutions looking into. And so this is something that you can explore as you're looking at different institutions to see what types of research and projects they're doing, and if that aligns with your interests as well. From the student side of things, there's also great opportunities to really get engaged beyond your classroom learning. So this is a really important part of US higher education, and especially at large research universities where students have opportunities to apply their learning into kind of real world situations. One example of that here is our Tiger Hacks competition, where we have an annual hackathon competition. And so this is certainly a great way to put your skills to use in terms of having teams, addressing different challenges that are issued through the competition. But it's also a great way to connect with industry. So there's industry sponsors, there's industry talks that happen. And so it's just one way for students to start engaging with industry and learning through leaders in that field. Now I'll talk about engineering. So we made it through ST, now we're in E of STEM, so engineering. There are, of course, many different types of engineering available to students, many different specialties. I've listed the academic department specific to Mizzou, so you'll see we have many different types of engineering represented at my institution. But it's something you can explore as you're looking at different research universities and see if it aligns with your interests. And as with all the other STEM fields I mentioned, it tends to be pretty interdisciplinary in terms of the coursework and the research opportunities available. Speaking of research, I've listed the different centers and institutes that are specific to our College of Engineering at Mizzou. So this is, again, another indicator of the types of specialties of the faculty and the different work that's happening there. So if you're interested in research, this is a good way to get an idea for that as you're exploring different university websites, is to see some of their specialization areas. A highlight I wanted to emphasize within our College of Engineering is competition teams, because this is something at large universities that I don't think is always as well known for students who are considering university. And that's that there are so many different ways for you to get involved. I know we talk a lot about student organizations, but competition teams are a really great way for students to get involved on campus, but also to really learn by doing. So you can join a competition team in any of these categories you see listed here. And it's a good way to apply your learning and also to connect with other students. They often tend to be pretty interdisciplinary again, and to then connect with industry through that process. So check out competition teams for some of the programs that you're considering. It's a really great educational experience, and they tend to be pretty fun as well. And it's a good resume builder, by the way. I know that's something that is an important part of the educational experience as far as gaining the skills and types of experiences that will set you apart when you graduate. And this is one of those where you kind of take an additional step in the process of not just doing coursework, but also getting involved beyond the classroom. And I did want to highlight kind of a fun element of studying STEM. I know STEM fields can be something that are, some students might think they can be challenging or rigorous, and they certainly can be, but there's also great parts of fun student experience. And so one part of that at Mizzou is our Engineers Week, or E-Week as we call it. And this is a great tradition at Mizzou that dates all the way back to 1903. And it includes 8 days of celebration of engineers across campus. There's a lot of fun traditions that happen with that. And we even light our dome green for Engineers Week each year. So everyone in the city knows that it's Engineers Week when it comes around. All right, now I'll talk about mathematics, the last letter of STEM. Mathematics is certainly a great area of study that you can consider as well. And this is one where, of course, it's a foundation for a lot of the other STEM-related fields and, many other disciplines as well. So math is an important area of study. And there is something where there are opportunities to study math that are not, there's different variations, or there's different specialties within mathematics. And so you do kind of have that combination of traditional math or your classroom learning, but also you will have opportunities to apply that in a variety of different settings. I think it's important to be aware too that, of course you have faculty with a lot of different backgrounds and specialties. And so I think sometimes with students, they don't always think of math and research hand in hand, but there's always research happening in math as well. So I just highlighted a couple faculty at Mizzou to kind of show you 2 different areas of research that they're involved with. And these are certainly things that students can get involved in all different aspects of research too, if that's an area that interests you. And also with math, there's applied mathematics, there's actuarial mathematics, there are different types of math that students can study that combines different skill sets and different disciplines. And so the one I highlighted here, actuarial mathematics, it's kind of about assessing risk. So using math and statistics to assess risks is something that's often tied to the insurance industry in the US. And so this is a program that helps prepare students to become an actuary. So there's a lot of great opportunities for hands-on learning, internships, that type of thing. And then finally, as far as STEM goes, I also wanted to highlight architecture, because even though there's not a letter for it in STEM, it is a program or an area of study that has been classified as STEM beginning in 2018. So architecture is one that combines many different STEM fields. And this is one too where I always like to explain it to students, because it can also work a little bit differently in the US, in that architecture as a profession, to be an architect, a licensed architect, you are required to have a master's level degree program. So at the bachelor's level, students can earn a degree in an area such as architectural studies, which is what we have at Mizzou, and then apply to a master's degree program. Some universities do have kind of a combined model for that. Others, it's separate. So, and by combined, I mean that it combines bachelor's and master's, and you apply to one and complete it all, sequentially, versus applying to a bachelor's program, completing a bachelor's program, then applying to a master's. So you'll find variation there in terms of those opportunities available. At Mizzou, we have architectural studies, and then we also have interior design. And something I think is interesting about this area is that certainly it involves the traditional form of architecture that you might think of, but it can also involve things like really incorporating technology. So if you're interested in, for example, video game design, some of our students who are interested in video game design actually decide to do architectural studies. If they're interested, for example, in designing the actual landscape, the actual computer side, technology side of the architectural part of a game. So if you're wanting to think of interior design in the aspect of a virtual space and virtual reality, there's great ways for students to design and create that space that's then used in a virtual environment. So it's something where you certainly have the traditional side, you also have the emerging fields element of it. So something to think about as you are thinking about architecture. And then it does involve different disciplines in STEM fields. And of course, architecture also is one where facilities are an important part of the educational experience. And so I just highlighted here some of the facilities available to students at Mizzou, because we think it's important for students to have access to the technology that they will use in their chosen profession. So lots of different facilities available so students can learn how to use that technology, that equipment that they would be expected to use as a professional. So my advice as you're exploring different career options, and I included the ones specific to my institution, but certainly you can find this for the different universities that you're interested in exploring. But the majors website, so at my institution, that's majors.missouri.edu, is where you can go on and really explore all the different programs that are available to you. And it can it's a great resource because it can tell you not only what that program's about and link out to the department site, but it can also give you an idea of common career paths for students interested in that major, what students tend to go on to do. And then there's also the career services site, which is career.missouri.edu at my institution. And that's something where you can go on there as you're exploring different majors and career paths. There's different resources to help you make those types of decisions. So it kind of feeds into one another where if you're not quite sure what you want to study, or if you're not quite sure what, for example, a electrical engineer, what types of work that they might do when they're done, both of these websites at my institution would be good resources for you. I would say as you're exploring other universities, you can find similar websites related to the majors available as well as the career resources centers. So now I wanted to just kind of talk about Mizzou overall, but before I do that, I wanted to take another quick pause and see if there was any questions specific to STEM that I can address before I go into some more general information about the University of Missouri and our application process. So I see we have had some come in, so I'll just get caught up on those real quick. Okay, so someone has asked if economics is considered STEM since it involves math and statistics. It kind of, I hate to give you this answer of it depends, but it does kind of depend on the university and the curriculum because, yeah, there's different types of economics out there. I would say traditionally it's not, it's not as officially a STEM field, but certainly if you find economics programs that do tend to be more heavily involved in math and statistics, then it can kind of be classified in that way. So you'll find different kind of emphasis areas within economics. So it really does kind of vary depending on the curriculum. And it is something too where STEM as a category can be, it's not always a super strict definition. There are implications for that when it comes to, how it's defined in terms of sort of from like the government side of things as far as whether or not it's a STEM recognized program. But at the same time, the actual experience of your educational curriculum could certainly be heavily STEM, whether or not it's officially a STEM program. So I know that can be a confusing answer, but basically you'll find some variation there. And so many different disciplines incorporate STEM, whether or not they are traditional STEM fields. So then there's a question about, do universities in general, let's see, I'm trying to, universities in general mean research-based and colleges mean no research in the US. Oh, I see. So yeah, the difference between colleges and universities. This is one where it's a very confusing terminology because it's not strictly defined. It's one that we use colloquially in the US. Oftentimes people say they go to college, even if they're going to a university. So we tend to use those terms interchangeably. And so there's not always a strict definition for it. As a very, very general rule, a lot of times universities are four-year institutions. Colleges might be four-year institutions, but they might be two-year institutions. So unfortunately, college or university is not going to be the best indicator to you of the types of programs and what type of research that they have offered at that institution. So you can kind of use it as like a very, very rough starting point. But the best thing to do is to kind of look at the institution itself and maybe that Carnegie classification to figure out what that classification might be, what their official classification is, but then also just kind of explore that university to learn more about the types of research that they have available. Because there are, certainly even, small liberal arts type colleges that do have some aspects of research that might be available. So you will find variation from one institution to another. It's just that with being universities that are classified as research universities, you know for sure that they do have a high level of research output. Let's see, and someone has asked if we offer research-based assistantships for undergraduate students. That's also a great question. So there are different models for this. So the short answer is yes. There are some different types of research-based employment that students can do. So international students at the undergraduate level are eligible to work on campus as a part-time, in a part-time capacity, so up to 20 hours per week. And some of those could be in research-related roles. So some academic departments and programs do have kind of structured research experiences where you could be kind of hired as a student, a research assistant in a lab setting, or whatever the research project might be. So that is certainly something that is possible. However, I did want to offer one clarification, because sometimes when you hear of research assistantships, a lot of times the implication there is more at the graduate level, because that's the most common type of graduate. So master's, PhD level funding is graduate research assistantships, graduate teaching assistantships. So these are kind of a different type of model than your traditional scholarships. So you'll find some variation there between the undergraduate opportunities and master's, PhD. So if you're not quite sure of how that works for a particular institution, just ask. They can let you know as far as what types of opportunities there are. And sometimes that will be specific to the particular academic department. And then someone's asked about OPT, if it's longer than 1 year for students in STEM programs, for bachelor's degrees programs. Yes, it is. And I actually have a little video on YouTube that I can enter potentially into this chat or send to you all afterwards that kind of explains CPT and OPT. So if you're not familiar with those terms, don't worry about it. I'm not going to go fully into it in this presentation just for time's sake. But curricular practical training, as well as optional practical training, are opportunities for students to gain experience in a particular industry. And for STEM fields, yes, many STEM fields are eligible for what's called an OPT extension, which does allow people to work longer than 1 year. So if it is a STEM eligible program, that is the case. And then someone's asked about internships at the undergraduate level and co-op and how this affects post-study OPT. These are great questions. So internships at the undergraduate level, there's many different opportunities available. At my institution, for example, we have an overall career offices center, but then there's also many career centers specific to different academic departments. So for example, our College of Engineering has their own career center that helps students with things like internships. So many different types of internships there where students can connect with industries. Sometimes they have career and internship fairs where you can meet different potential internship providers, potentially even interview while they're on campus. Some departments have sort of structured programs that students can apply for. So you'll find variation there. And then as far as how this affects your post-study OPT, it's a little bit complicated. So I'm unfortunately going to not get into all of the details there. It kind of depends. There's so many factors involved there. So there's something called CPT, which is curricular practical training. And that's something where it's tied to a particular internship that you do while you're a current student. And so it depends on whether or not you are using CPT or OPT and how that would impact your long-term OPT eligibility and the total duration you have available for that. So of course, it's a kind of a complicated answer. And so I'd be more than happy to reach out to me after this presentation. I can go into all the nuance of how that works, or you can check out that video that I referenced as well. So yeah, great questions you all have there related to different STEM opportunities. And so I will now continue on kind of the last part of this presentation to talk about Mizzou overall and our application process, and then I'll do time at the very end for any final questions that you all have. So thank you for your questions along the way. So I have talked a lot about, just highlighted examples of the different STEM programs at Mizzou, but as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, we do have 300 degree programs from bachelor's through PhD, and we have that across many different disciplines. And so you'll see here are different colleges and schools available at Mizzou. One of the areas we're also really well known for is journalism. We happen to have the oldest school of journalism in the world. And so this is something where there's different aspects of journalism happening at Mizzou. And so you'll find that our students are studying many different types of things. We have a lot of different specialties, and we do have a lot of interdisciplinary study across a lot of these different areas. So in the case of journalism, for example, it's very common for students to have at least a secondary area of study, which we call a minor, or a double major. And same with STEM fields. So it's common for our students to study more than one thing. And we also have flexibility in that if students change their mind, that's okay, and we'll work with you on that process. No matter what you study at Mizzou, our educational philosophy is called the Missouri method, and that means learning by doing. So we really emphasize that hands-on learning experiences. So, I did try to highlight some of those through STEM fields, but just know that's across all of the disciplines that we offer at my institution. And we do offer a very much traditional US college experience where there's great opportunities to get involved, to connect with other students, to engage in traditions, to have that balance between classroom learning and out of classroom learning and enjoying your experience. And so we think this is an important part of the overall US experience. And we think this is also something that helps you to kind of have a great connection with the institution, but also it's a great way to develop things like leadership skills that can also serve you well as you continue on in your chosen path. And speaking of that, our students are successful after they complete their studies. So we have about 93% career outcomes rate within 6 months of graduation. So this means students either find employment or are accepted into graduate school. And this is, for all of our programs combined. So our students are successful in any variety of fields. And we think that a lot of that comes from that combination of strong academics as well as a strong out of classroom learning opportunities. So talking briefly about kind of the admissions process, we do try to keep it fairly straightforward at Mizzou. So we have an online application where students kind of submit the Mizzou application, which is our own, or the Common App. Either one is fine, and we do not have a preference. Then we require students to submit your application materials. So it's a $65 application fee, and then your academic records from throughout high school. Most commonly, students will apply in the first semester of their final year of study. And so we would look at everything you've completed up to that point. And then we would have you send us your exam scores. So we do require an English proficiency exam. Most commonly students submit TOEFL or IELTS, but there are a few others we do accept. And then at Mizzou, we do not require the SAT or SAT exam or ACT for admission purposes. However, we do require them for scholarship consideration or for admission to our honors college. As far as the particular academic requirements we're looking for, we look to see the curriculum that your high school uses, and then we convert that to a 4.0 scale. So we're looking for the equivalent of a 2.5 on a 4.0 scale, and you see we've listed a number of others as well. If you do not see yours listed, don't worry. We have admissions evaluators who are familiar with educational systems around the world, and they would convert the scale that your school uses to determine the equivalent. And then our English requirements are listed here. So many of our programs require a 79 on the TOEFL with no part score lower than a 17 or the equivalent. But you'll see there are a few of our colleges and schools that do have higher requirements. So, this is certainly all available on our website, so I don't expect you to memorize that all now, but if you're not sure, you can always just reach out and ask. And one of the things I wanted to really emphasize with you all is our international student ambassadors. So I know I've talked a lot about different elements of Mizzou, and I'm certainly happy to be a resource to you as you are exploring Mizzou and wanting to learn more about the opportunities available. But we're very fortunate at my institution to have international student ambassadors who represent different countries and different academic programs. And they're a great resource if you're wanting to learn more about what it's really like to study at Mizzou as an international student. So that is kind of the website to connect with them. I'd also be more than happy to get you in contact with them But I do encourage you, as you are exploring different universities, to do this very thing, to connect with students. Certainly ask questions of the institution itself, but if you have the opportunity to connect with current students, I think it gives you a really great perspective on if that institution is going to be a good fit for you and what you're looking for. All right, so I do want to save some time here at the end for any final questions that you all have. So feel free to go ahead and enter those into the Q&A chat, and I will answer those. But before I do, I just wanted to, again, reemphasize that this is my email address. This is the main website for the University of Missouri. So certainly if you do have questions about studying in the US in general, about medical school, about any of these things, OPT, I'd be happy to answer those questions for you either now or through email. And same if you have questions about Mizzou, I'm happy to be a resource to you in that process. So go ahead and I see we have some questions coming in, but just want to say go ahead and keep putting those in there. So we have someone asking about preference between IELTS, TOEFL, or Duolingo. So this will vary from one university to another. At Mizzou currently, we don't have a preference between TOEFL or IELTS. Either one is completely fine. It really doesn't make a difference to us which one students submit. We need one or the other. At Mizzou currently, as far as Duolingo is concerned, we have been accepting it for fall 2020 admission as well as spring 2021 due to challenges related to COVID-19. However, we do not yet have it approved for future terms. So as of right now, we do not accept it for fall 2021. That's something that we are certainly looking at, but it will require faculty approval. And so as of now, we would just be able to do TOEFL, IELTS, or one of the other exams we do accept. All right, another great question is confusion between computer science and IT. How are they different? And can you combine either with a communications major? So this is another good question we have here. There's different kind of emphasis areas, different types of coursework you would be taking. I understand the confusion because both of those can be kind of interdisciplinary in nature. But what I would suggest actually is to go on and look at the curriculum and the actual courses you're taking, the types of experiences you'd be gaining to see if that's a good fit for what you're looking for. And then also, I think when you're kind of getting into that granular level of what, trying to make a decision among different programs, I think it's good to connect with the particular college of interest to you. So in our case, for example, I'd be happy to get you in contact with the College of Engineering so they can really talk you through those options and help you to figure out which one might be a better fit. And also to be aware that honestly, it's okay if you're not quite sure, because at Mizzou anyway, you could be admitted kind of as pre-engineering or undeclared engineering. And you could then work with your academic advisor after you come, take some courses in different areas, and then make that decision on which specialization is the best for you and your interests. And then as far as combining it with another minor, yes, we do have students certainly who study more than one thing. So we have students who do a double major or a major and a minor or a major and more than one minor. So yes, that is possible. I do like to let people know that as you are exploring your different options for that it is like there is that flexibility to do that. If you're choosing areas of study that are quite similar, then you can often do that in a traditional time window of, usually in the US, a degree program takes 4 years of study. The more programs you add on to that, especially if they're in very different areas, that could extend your overall time it takes to complete your different degrees that you're interested in. However, so that is possible, that it could take more than 4 years if you add on additional areas. But you will work with your academic advisor, and that person will help you to take your courses, help you to make those decisions on what's best for you. And then they can kind of help you to map out your degree program to complete it in the least amount of time possible. Great, and then I have a parent asking about campus safety and also any safety measures for COVID-19. This is a great question. I actually have a webinar presentation I could send you where we kind of have outlined many different safety measures on our campus, but we certainly understand safety is a concern. That's one of the things that's nice about attending university like my institution is that we are in what's called a college town. It's a very great environment for university study. Students can, our kind of downtown areas connected to our campus, and so students can walk to shops and restaurants. And so we do certainly take campus safety very seriously, and there's many different resources available. So we do have our own kind of police department that is on campus, internationally accredited police department. And so they have a lot of safety measures in place, as well as different training and resources available to students. So we have everything from safety beacons to where if a student is in a situation where they are fearful, then they can be connected immediately to police on campus. There's also different police officers who are patrolling the campus. In the residence halls, they are secured by access cards and keys, and there's professional staff. So there's many different safety measures in place to promote a safe environment. And we are fortunate that we have been recognized for our safety measures at Mizzou. We've been recognized as number 6 in the nation for safety resources available. So we do take it very seriously. We have many plans in place to ensure a safe environment for our students, or to have the support needed if, worst case scenario, if they find themselves in a difficult situation. So, so that is something that we understand is a concern and something that we take very seriously. So yeah, if you have specific questions about that, feel free to reach out to me by email, and I can provide you with some more details about our different safety measures. And similarly for COVID-19, we have a ton of plans in place for reopening for the fall. So we have a few different websites dedicated to that information for students, for parents to be aware of the measures that we're taking to address the challenges related to COVID-19, as well as the plans and backup plans that we have for that. And so yes, I'd be happy to provide you with that information as well. So then another question is about popular clubs and activities and Campus Life, City of Columbia. Great questions. So we have more than 600 clubs and organizations at Mizzou. So it's very much a very active, engaged campus experience. Our students really take that to heart when we say learning by doing, and kind of having that type of experience. Our students really do that. There's really not an excuse to be bored at Mizzou, because students are always engaged in doing something. And so it's hard to even say what would be like a popular club or activity, but I think what I always like to emphasize in this area is that it's a good place for you to kind of find your own communities. And so we even have something that we call involvement ambassadors, and these are current students who you can meet with, connect with, get to know, and then they can help you to kind of navigate all of those many different options available and help you to connect with different clubs and organizations that might align with your interests and passions, whether those be academic or social or cultural or whatever the case may be. What I do also like to emphasize for international students in this audience in particular is that we do have an exceptional international student council that kind of functions as a student government in a sense for all the different international clubs and organizations on campus. So they're a good voice for the international student body. They advocate on behalf of international students to promote cultural awareness. They're a really great organization to get involved with. And I'd say they're an umbrella organization because they're kind of the overall connector of many different ones we have. So we also have an organization specific to our international students and scholars. So really great opportunities for students to connect. But I think it's great because it's not just one thing. So it's not just academics, it's not just social. You'll find a really great blend where you can connect with other students. And then as far as Campus Life City of Columbia goes, yeah, there's always something going on. We have an international film festival that comes through Columbia each year. There's a lot of arts and entertainment. We have a lot of nature. And so there's many different things going on depending on what your interest can be. That's one of the great things about a university is that it brings a lot of energy and culture to a college town. And so there's a lot of different types of things that you can get involved with. And certainly on our website, or we have different videos or ambassadors that you can connect with if you want to learn more about some of those types of opportunities. Another great question about scholarships and if they're renewable for only 1 year, then you file a separate application. So scholarships at Mizzou, we do have automatic awards available. In fact, I think I have a bonus slide in here, yeah, about our first year scholarships. The reason I didn't include this in the main part of the presentation is because we are currently in the process of updating our scholarships for the next academic year. So this could change a little bit. But as of right now, these are the scholarships that we do have available. So the automatic awards are based specifically on SAT or ACT scores. And so you do not submit a separate scholarship application for this. As long as you meet the minimum criteria, you automatically receive that award. And so those are great opportunities for students. They are renewable each year as long as you meet the renewal criteria. And then we also do have a highly competitive scholarship called the Stamp Scholars Award. This one does require a separate application process. The deadline to be considered for this is December 1st to submit all required materials. And as you see, it has a pretty high minimum score requirement. It also has a pretty extensive review process. This only goes to a handful of students in the overall applicant pool, both US and domestic. Great question. And sharing more information about our current Indian students. Sure, yeah, so we are fortunate to have a strong population on our campus of Indian students at different levels of study. So I would say that at Mizzou, the majority of our students of our Indian students are at the graduate level, so master's, PhD, but we certainly do have students at the undergraduate, so the bachelor's level as well. There's also great connections in the community with the Indian Cultural Association that I mentioned. There's really great ways to connect with other students, other Indian students, as well as to celebrate Indian culture and to do that not just on campus, but in the city of Columbia. So yeah, it's something that we are very proud to have on our campus. There's different annual events that happen each year through the Indian Student Association. And so you can still have that connection to culture and to meet other people who have that shared experience, as well as to be an ambassador for India to the greater Mizzou community and Columbia community. So how much access will you have to faculty members as a bachelor's degree student? You have tons of access to faculty as a bachelor's degree student. I think the reason you might be asking this question is because sometimes there's a perception at large research universities that that faculty only do research or are mostly engaged in research and not in teaching. But I think you might be pleasantly surprised that faculty are engaged in teaching as well. Sort of how that works sometimes, depending on the course that you're taking, is some of the large introductory courses might have certain parts of it led by a graduate student. So in some cases, it might be the faculty member who provides the overall instruction for the course. And then you might have like a graduate teaching assistant, for example, who might be leading the lab section to really break down the material. I personally see this as a benefit because you have the faculty member with the expertise who can really provide great information. And then you also have the opportunity to connect with graduate students who have more recently gone through it, learn this material, and can kind of help it break it down for you. So you will find that combination. But faculty members certainly are teaching courses. They're also engaged in research. Faculty members have things called office hours, where if you're not sure for a course of certain material, you have questions, perhaps you're wanting to get involved in research and you want to know where to start, our faculty members are there to connect with you and help answer those types of questions that you might have. So yes, you do have good access to faculty members as a bachelor's degree student. We have an 18-to-1 student to faculty ratio. So students are, it's a good ratio for students to still make those types of meaningful connections. Do we require international freshmen to live on campus? And then how does the housing meal plan work? So yes, we do require international students, or well, all students actually, all freshman students to live on campus their first year. The reason for this is we found that students who live on campus are more likely to be successful long-term in their academics as well as continuing in their studies. We think it's an important part of the experience and really get students engaged on campus as well as connected to academic resources. So we do have students live on campus, and as far as the housing and meal plan works, there's different options available. So we have different styles of housing. We have different, whether you're wanting to be in like a traditional residence hall setting versus more apartment or suite style. And similarly with the meal plans, We have dining halls where you have kind of a meal plan, and those are, you kind of swipe in, and that is, you kind of have the option of kind of a buffet type environment, but there's also different eateries on campus that also accept parts of the meal plan, and so you could use those for you know, those types of meals too. So you'll find variation depending on which meal plan you choose, whether it is the frequency of meals, you know, how many you want to have in a given week, that type of a thing. So it varies, but there's many different dining and housing options available. Sure, so there's a question about application requirements in terms of recommendation letters and essays. So at Mizzou, we do not require recommendation letters or essays for admission. We have a fairly straightforward admission where we're going to look specifically at your academic background of your high school and how you performed in your coursework to make a determination if you're ready for our university level study. The time that a recommendation letter and essay comes into play is if you're interested in applying to our honors college. So that's for students who are looking for an especially academically rigorous experience. It's kind of like having a small liberal arts college within a large research university in a way, and helping to kind of navigate that. So the honors college is a great opportunity. If you're not familiar with an honors college, shoot me an email. I can send you some more information about some details about our honors college and how that works. But anyway, all of that's to say that would be when an essay or letter of recommendation is required, is if you're interested in the honors college itself. Otherwise, not required. Great, and I see a question about jobs and internships for undergraduate students. Sure, so this is another one where I actually do have a little YouTube video that you can check out on our page that kind of talks about job opportunities for international students. So the types of jobs you can have as a student will vary. So as I mentioned, international students can work up to 20 hours per week when classes are in session. And so you could be hired from anything from dining services to a residence hall to the recreation center or an academic department or building or, you know, facility. So if you, you know, it could be related to your major, or it could be kind of just a general campus job. So it really varies depending on the type of job you seek, as well as the opportunities that you decide to apply for. In terms of internship opportunities, there are many different types available, and a lot of it's specific to your academic area of study. So there's a lot of opportunities to connect with industry through the career resources that I mentioned previously, and you'll find internships. A lot of times students will complete those in the summer, you know, during academic breaks. Unless you're doing like an on-campus like research internship. So, I mean, there's always variation to it, but a lot of those are summer experiences. Students find those both locally with local organizations across the US and even internationally. There are also, depending on the program, some structured internships offered through the academic program itself. So a lot of variety there. You can always check out that career website, careers.missouri.edu, if you want to kind of explore some of the types of opportunities that are available. Or check with the department website that's of interest to you as well. All right, so from admission scholarship, asking to weigh the terms of importance, transcripts, test scores, and English scores. Sure, so for admission purposes, we do look at it all kind of collectively. So we look to see that you kind of address each of those areas. So for the transcripts point of view, we look to see that you have the equivalent of a 2.5 on a 4.0 scale. The test scores part of that for English proficiency is really essentially a threshold area. So as long as you are above the minimum TOEFL or IELTS score requirements, then you're good to go. For students who fall below those requirements, there are options available. So we do have a Center for English Language Learning where students have options if they don't quite meet the requirements there. And then as far as SAT or ACT scores, as I mentioned, they're not required for admission. And then in terms of scholarships, for the automatic awards, it's very straightforward. So as long as you meet that minimum requirement for the international merit or international honors, you'd automatically receive the award. In terms of the competitive scholarships, it's really a holistic view. And so you have to have very high test scores as well as very strong overall materials, because I mentioned there's only about a handful for the overall applicant pool. So, yeah. All right, and then so it looks like finally we have a question about IB students. A great question here. Would English be waived? And then also about AP. So with IB, we do actually accept IB for English, but it's the AB higher level English. And the challenge that we face with that is that, often IB exam results are not available until after you've already been admitted to Mizzou. So those, often don't come out until the summer. So in most cases, students just go ahead and submit a TOEFL or IELTS score so they can go ahead and finalize their admission. However, we do accept IB as meeting that minimum criteria. And then as far as AP credits go, yes, we do accept AP as well as IB credits to our university. So you could transfer those in as university level credit as long as you score well on those exams. And we do, on our admissions website, we do have a whole list of the different IB and AP courses and what scores you need to get on those for them to transfer in for credit. So yeah, y'all had some really great questions. I know that we are a bit over on our time here, so I want to be, aware of that fact. I don't want to keep you all too long, but I do want to, again, thank you all for joining me today, for asking questions, for being engaged. I've really appreciated this opportunity, and certainly just wanted to reiterate one more time that if you do have additional questions beyond this webinar, please do feel free to reach out to me at my email address listed here. I'll be happy to assist you, and if I don't know the answer, then I can always involve some of my colleagues who can assist you as well. So thanks again, and with that, I'll go ahead and wrap things up and see if there's any final thoughts from Kunal.
Absolutely. I'm just going to quickly launch a poll out here to everyone who can see it on their screen. Just give us one quick minute while we launch this poll. If you can confirm if you're able to see it, because we have just launched it right now. Shannon, are you able to see it, please?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so to the attendees, I request you to please vote. It really helps us with the feedback. And it's always nice for the institution officer to know more about, the session as well. So really appreciate that. If you could vote, I'm going to give it 10 more seconds because I know Ms. Shannon would have to go for another meeting as well. So we need to take care of that too. But I'm just going to wait for another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'm going to wrap the poll. And I'm just going to share the results. Ms. Shannon, can you see the results on your screen?
Yes, thank you all so much.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'm not too sure if I'm able to be seen on the screen. Am I be able to see on the screen?
Yes, well, I can see you.
Okay, great, wonderful. Okay, so to all the attendees, I know it's Friday evening, and of course you have a long weekend coming up, and it's 7 p.m. here. So thank you so much for joining us, the students, parents, and guidance counselors. Please be aware, as we shared in our emails, that this session is recorded and will be shared with your schools as well as the participating schools from across the cities that you're in. So thank you so much. And this will also be available on our social media pages, so you can share it with your friends and family members to gain information about a very important topic that I know many of you had questions about. Having said that, please join me and come forward in saying thank you to Ms. Shannon O'Hagan to present a very wonderful session today and to answer all your questions in such detail. So we truly appreciate your time, and we know it's very early in the United States, so really kindly appreciate your support to join us today. And with that, having said that, I think it's an end for today's session, and we wish you all the best, and we hope you can stay in touch with Ms. Shannon long after the session is over to continue the engagement and the relationship building between your school and Ms. Shannon and her institution, the University of Missouri. Having said that, thank you once again, and I wish you a wonderful day and a wonderful evening to everyone here in India.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.